In a nutshell, it was an infatuation with the truth in hindsight. Looking back on all the beautiful and brave people that I knew during the 80s, I missed them and I didn't want to be alone with their memories anymore. I wanted to bring them back to life again in a book and take others on their journey. A journey that was filled with struggles, a lot of close calls, choices, and sometimes danger, and dreams for change. A book, I don't know, it gives its characters immortality, you know? It was my experiences during my 20s. I was a new adult in the mid 80s, making my way in the world. And at that time, I was living at a housing project called Alumni Village and attending Florida State University, studying the English education and bartending at the Tallahassee Regional Airport Lounge. I have a desire to share some of the history of what life was like pre 9/11, pre COVID, pre Individual Disability Education Act. And I have always had a political intrigue with the Reagan era and the Catholic Church during the 80s. I want to preserve the verdant nature of Tallahassee and Florida's Panhandle. Many of the establishments from the 80s have been shut down and demolished, and in my story, they're still there, up and running. Finally, I guess I wanted to write this story to point out the sameness in us all. It's mostly a true story. The people and the places in the story are real, and most events in the story are true. Names and details, however, have been changed in order to protect everyone's privacy. There are some instances where the personal experiences of more than one person have actually been blended into one character in the story. I did this to drive the plot, create suspense, and add another layer of privacy protection. Two women tackling the challenges of earning, loving, and learning over 2 years on and off the college campus, alongside the Reagan era news events so close that they can feel the breezes, when a too good for true opportunity could determine who gets educated and who gets exploited. It's the 80s, and socializing in person is the norm. The characters in the story, they can't rely on electronic communication to make friends or find jobs. They have to show up. And we have two first-generation college women. They leave their tumultuous past behind them. They move to Florida's capital city, searching for new opportunities. And Lynette Autry's on the brink of a new life. She moves into the projects, registers for school, finds a job bartending at the airport, and balancing it all kind of drives her to despondency until a late night serendipitous meeting with this nurse and pre-med student, Marie Martinez. And her friendliness is completely contagious. So youthful follies ensue, and then Marie falls prey to a too good for true opportunity. And together with Dylan, a piano playing aircraft mechanic, and Father Juan, a Catholic parish diaconate, they become part of the spirit of a larger community where adversity changes to resilience and helping each other, laughter, love, and self-acceptance prevail. And love and surprise and real understanding arise. The story's themes are relevant to all young women making their way in the world. Don't mistake temptation for opportunity. We have these two women, and they're plagued with work and school and all these temptations. They have these great love interests. It's based on my experiences during my early 20s from 1985 to 1987 when I lived at Alumni Village Housing Project, attended Florida State University, and bartended at the Tallahassee Airport. This is about ordinary women during the Reagan era. It's every woman Could be any era. I was brought up and educated in the United States. I moved a lot while growing up, living on the East Coast, the West Coast, and down south. And I returned to the East Coast about 20 years ago, where I currently live north of Boston in the state of Massachusetts. And over the past 20 years, I've worked as a property manager, a high school teacher, and a paralegal. And while raising my family, I wrote and researched Of School and Women, my debut work of narrative nonfiction. I want my readers to climb into my time machine and fall in love with all the people in the story. I want them to learn some history and some life lessons along the way. And I want them to be reminded about the importance of helping each other, understanding and not judging others. And I want them to get brave and reinvent themselves when life gives them lemons. I want people to persevere and rise above the darkness like the characters do in the story. And I want them to feel and have empathy. My biggest goal for the book is to share my story and bring these characters to life. And I'd like to donate a portion of the royalties to charity, specifically a charity that supports survivors of human trafficking. On Amazon in September 2020, there were about 100 plus books that came up about women, and another 100 or so that came up about the Reagan era. But there were no books about ordinary women at school during the Reagan era. If I was to categorize Of School and Women by genre, I would call it a new adult nonfiction. What I found out that was pretty interesting is when I referred to the Library of Congress category lists, it showed that new adult was listed under fiction, but not under nonfiction. Under nonfiction, you've got biography, autobiography, you got memoir, you got young adult nonfiction. But there was no new adult nonfiction. Genre is going to make Of School and Women stand out. It's actually a new adult nonfiction book. Nothing says 80s like a George Michael song. In fact, I couldn't have written my book, Of School and Women, without some of his song lyrics. So tied into our lives are songs from the radio. Music artists like George Michael expressing thoughts that others often keep to themselves are often the seeds of change in society. And what good is life without change? Us writers and other creators and musicians write songs and we write our books, I think, for the purpose of change, hoping that by reading our toils over hundreds of pages that our readers will come out of our story somewhat changed. I know that is my hope for my book. In the name of the changes that came out of the 80s, the setting for Of School and Women, I applied for a print license from Alfred Music, and I'm grateful that it was approved. Many thanks to Alfred Music for sharing the rights to their songs with me, and many thanks to the late George Michael for making waves of change. A wise church music director told me recently, music will never lie to you. And that feels like a solid truth to me. Of School and Women is one of a kind. It's insightful, and it's told with curiosity and understanding. It's my heart and soul.